All right, folks, it is time for another weekly project update down here at St. Simon's Elementary. This week, I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet. First off, we're going to start at the interior of the campus where we are establishing a running track, playground, and general sidewalks. You can see that first we've got here, which is an architectural feature. It is a bell tower. We've got a monolithic pour set up to take place tomorrow. You can see we've got our rebar caging set into place for our footer, and we also have our anchor bolts established for steel columns and base plates to be attached there too. At the end of the day, this thing will be concrete, brick pavers on top of it, steel columns, and a structure that houses a historic bell tower. You can see we've got our Mini X on site, which prepped for this, and then we also have our Bobcat over there for our general grading. Along with prepping for our bell tower, we also have started our prep work for our sidewalks, which we talked about last week. Those sidewalks will serve from the admin building all the way over to the gymnasium, and we're going to get that in place before we bring Peachtree Canopies to come in and install their anodized aluminum walkway coverings. That's what we've got going on the interior of the site. After we get our sidewalks established, our canopies in place, really before we get our canopies in place, but after we get our sidewalks established, we'll also bring in Woodard Construction for them to do their storm drainage on those classroom buildings that we're renovating now. That storm drainage will come over here, come to the center of the running track, which we've got a main drainage, and then out towards this bus access road where we've got our main line. Next, let's go walk over to our clinic and teacher workstation and see what we've got going on there. All right, the next thing that is noteworthy for discussion this week is what we've got going on at our teacher workstation and our clinic. We've talked about the importance of this GAB, our curb and gutter, for us to be able to export lunches from the back of the kitchen up towards the gymnasium. We've talked about our masonry infill at the teacher dining area, and we've kind of talked about the plumbing that we've got into place at our clinic that came out and then served our teacher dining. One thing that we have definitely talked about as an importance is our cafeteria. And so you can see that this week it looks a lot different. We don't have that ugly green roof on our cafeteria, and that is because they gave it to us on Monday for us to occupy and abate. And so if I walk into from the back of the house into what will be the clinic, you can see that abatement taking place, and you can also see the progress that we've been able to make by being able to occupy that space. So this plastic here is a part of our abatement process. It's tied to negative air machines, which is tied to our abatement area. And you can see that we've got all that safed off very well with those negative air machines and air sampling established. But in past, and hopefully in past, what you would see in this clinic area is a temporary corridor that served from our admin building, which is this right here, which is an occupied space daily, through this walkway into a temporary corridor, and then over here into our cafeteria. And by us being able to get that cafeteria in place, or really start our work in the cafeteria and occupy the space, and then export the food from the back of the house of the cafeteria, we have made a tremendous stride forward. You can see here that in our clinic, we've got our clinic restroom established, and then we also have our general corridor that will be permanent and serve between our admin and our new classroom additions. I know that's really hard to see with all the junk that we've got going on in here in the metal stud framing, but it is definitely a noteworthy stride forward in the progress of this project. So next I'm going to walk to the front of the house and we'll go over what we've got going on with our classrooms. All right, here we are at the front of the house. What was previously our main entrance to this school and its campus. And the first thing that jumps to mind as noteworthy is the fact that the cafeteria that we previously talked about, we have been able to begin our roof demolition. We held off from starting our roof demolition while the cafeteria was being used by students because we didn't want to be in the middle of work and a rain event cause a leak into the cafeteria for us to be able to deal with. If I walk over here, you can actually see the abatement signs and that our abatement activities are ongoing. You can kind of see it over here. where it says danger, danger, abatement, abatement, which is good. We don't want anybody other than our specialty abatement contractor in that space while we're working. You can see we've got a ladder here where our roofing contractor was previously up on the roof today, getting rid of that old sheet metal and establishing a plan forward with how to install our new PVC roof membrane. If I walk into the classroom edition, there's three things that are noteworthy. Last week we talked about how we were proceeding with overhead activities and that we needed a plumber and fire sprinkler tradesman on site. We have since got our plumber on site and he has begun his work. Again, just as a side note, you can see we've got our warning asbestos signs, and just to continue with our previous thought of corridors and paths forward by being able to occupy this space. If I walk into here, my last video was standing from that viewpoint over there. You can really see that this is going to be a connecting corridor. Beyond that sheetrock temporary partition, we've got our admin facility. Over here, we're preparing for our bathroom, storage space, and then another storage space. And so that was a huge milestone for us to be able to get what was once a temporary corridor from over in the admin space through our construction workspace and then left through the corridor into the cafeteria and us begin our abatement work. You can see that is one area of access into that workspace for the abatement workers. So that's abatement. That's definitely noteworthy with our classrooms, as well as our roofing that we're proceeding with. The other thing is that we have started our overhead rough-in plumbing. If I walk over here to a wet wall, you can see that I've got a 1/2-inch water supply line that is stubbed into the wall but is not yet made overhead, which is why it is cast into the wall at an angle. If I sit here at the end of the day, when I'm the plumber, I'm gonna make a final connection, something like this, and then it will come out of the wall overhead through these transoms, that's a transom, and then into the domestic water supply line that we have established. You can't necessarily see that here, but you can definitely see that over here, where Jamie Oates, our plumber, has already teed out for those supply line connections to be made. I'm going to pause for a second just to walk to that valved stub in and show you exactly what I'm talking about. That is going to be awesome for us because all we have to do is tie in our new connection, test it, and we'll be good to go. The other thing that we talked about last week that was huge, we've talked about our floors a little bit, don't want to dive into that right now, but the other thing that was huge is our existing masonry partition that demises between classroom and corridor. We did convince the owner to fur this out, which is going to save us twofold. It's going to save us on those visual display boards. It's also going to save us on exposed conduit. Previously, these electrical outlets that are roughed in into the wall but don't yet have their conduits made up and roughed in overhead, those would have been exposed wire molding, and it is a little bit more labor on the front end for us to add the metal framing and add those electrical boxes. But on the back end, as we're trying to finish this project, it's going to save us tremendously by not having to deal with that, and again, caulking the imperfections along that brick masonry wall. So that's what we've got going on with St. Simon's Elementary. Looking out next 2 weeks, our big goals really are focused on our cafeteria. We want to get rid of our demolition efforts. Probably was not the best for me to flip the camera as I'm talking and making a video, but we want to get through our abatement and demolition efforts, and we want to start the same processes that we've done here, which is general trenching and rough framing for us to start thinking about overhead activities. On the classroom portion of things, our big milestone for next week is getting our fire sprinkler subcontractor, which already has his main established here, branched into our classrooms so that he can start making up overhead.